As a behavior analyst, you are going to wear several different hats. Behavior analysts have many different roles. So, you might be responsible for assessing individuals, developing programs, administering or implementing these programs. You might take on a training and supervisory role, making sure that others know how to conduct assessments and implement programs. One of the most important roles of a behavior analyst is that of an evaluator. So you are going to need to be able to use data to make decisions whether or not your individualized interventions are working or whether certain programs are working. So you might be responsible for evaluating individual change or systems level change. Having an understanding of procedures to evaluate programs is something that you need to be equipped with. And so, this course in single case research design is going to help provide you with a foundation to be able to do that. I want to talk to you a little bit about the concept of a scientist practitioner. Behavior analysts use science, we use the scientific method to guide our practice. And then we also use our practice to help shape the science. As a scientist practitioner, behavior analysts have several important responsibilities. As practitioners, we need to make sure that we are active consumers of the literature, that we're staying on top of current best practice and changes going on in our field. That's why it's so important for you to learn how to critically analyze the literature and read journal articles. I know that you might have been hoping that once you graduate from the program at Ball State and you're a practicing behavior analyst that you would never need to read another journal article. Um, if that was your hope, I'm sorry to burst your bubble because behavior analysts are constantly going to read and stay on top of what's going on in the literature. It's actually an ethical responsibility. Behavior analysts, in their capacity as practitioners and scientists, are also responsible for evaluating. So, at the individual level, I am always going to use data to guide my decisions regarding the interventions that I'm selecting and whether or not these interventions are effective for a particular client. I can also evaluate larger programs. So, for example, as a behavior analyst, I might be able to conduct some program evaluations to know whether or not a program is effective for a larger group of individuals. The role as an evaluator is really important when you conceptualize the behavior analyst as a scientist practitioner. Not only does it let us make database decisions regarding our clients and intervention effectiveness, but it helps to increase accountability. Some of you might currently bill insurance, and you know that insurance and managed care is always asking us to prove our worth or prove that our interventions are effective and efficient. And so, single case research design can be a vehicle to help us to provide support regarding the effectiveness of our interventions. Behavior analysts are also researchers. We have an obligation to produce new data from the setting where we work and the clients with whom we work in order to contribute to the larger applied or scientific community. Um, and the concepts of science and practice are really complementary in applied research and your role as a behavior analyst. So, for example, in my practice, I conduct a lot of research, and most of my research stems from my clinical practice. I observe a problem and I try to come up with a way to fix that problem. Sometimes I'll be working with a client and there'll be a really interesting presenting problem. And so I'll want to try out different interventions or maybe even replicate interventions. I know most recently I was working with a 8-year-old who engaged in public masturbation. And so as a consumer of the research, I was able to do a literature search to see what people have done before, how they've assessed the problem, how they've intervened. I collected data and use those data to guide my intervention decisions and whether or not I was going to introduce or withdraw particular intervention components. And then I can give back to the larger scientific community by presenting those data, whether through publication or at a presentation. Of course, I've gone through the appropriate ethical channels, institutional review board, and obtaining consent and assent. So my research can be guided, or my clinical work can guide my research. And on the other hand, my clinical work and the interventions that I select and the way that I evaluate interventions, effectiveness is definitely guided by the scientific method. So when I was working with that individual who engaged in public masturbation, I used the scientific method to try to come up with hypotheses and test out those hypotheses regarding interventions. As you continue on your journey to becoming a behavior analyst, please learn to embrace your role as a scientist and a practitioner. Make sure that you're always using the scientific method in your approach to uh, addressing clinical problems, and then help use your clinical practice to give back to the larger scientific community.